Homelessness and Poverty Committee. I'm joined by Mike Bonin, my colleague, and we will have quorum shortly, but in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and hear multiple comment cards before we start the agenda. And having said that, we will hear from Mike Greenspan, who has filled out items, all items 1 through 6, followed by Ms. Audrey M., followed by Joe Jimenez, and you'll have 2 minutes each for all the items. Mr. Greenspan.
Yes. Microphones. Okay. Mike Greenspan, a 5-0 Florida Gator, UCLA. I don't. Well, you know, there's something that caught my eye, and I'm going to go to it first because I'm an old fogey at 65. Item 3, about a pilot program that provides cash assistance to seniors, when we're not talking about high school kids, for basic essentials like rent, food, and medical needs. I'll give everyone a smile. Nice smile to show how Denti-Cal has failed, and USC Herman Ostrow School of Dentistry, so I could really use some help if it was actually for real. And now let's talk about other things, because when we are talking about city property, hopefully we're going to do something constructive with it. We're not always constructive with the taxpayers' funds. And if you don't believe me, just look at the Bruin football program. Hundreds, tens of millions of dollars going down this black hole. Why do I mention it? Because that is money that could be going to homeless support services. I mean, one of these days I'm going to go shopping and buy some blue pencils. I'll bring some to your committee, I'll bring some to the city council, and I'll send some to Governor Newsom, so he gets the idea to blue pencil the Bruin football budget and actually transfer that money to homeless support services. Now, transfer payments are usually these white rednecks, and it's their code word for welfare. Transfer payments. Well, no, this is transferring money that's not being well spent to possibly better spent money. And instead of having 3 or 5 committees like the HHH, we could actually have some state people monitoring.
All right, you have 1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, let me continue on that thing about taking the Bruin money. Well, it's our money, but it's in the hands and being misused by the bureaucracy of UCLA. There are plenty of homeless people in Westwood. I don't see why we're giving them money to have their program. It reminds me of a remark years ago made by Governor Wallace of Alabama. He was running for president, and these reporters came over from India. Well, we wanted to take pictures of people starving in Alabama. And he told them to go back to India, and they could take lots of pictures of people starving in India. So
it's going with the clock.
They really, it's the same thing. If we're going to talk about homelessness, well, why don't we talk about the money we're wasting in Westwood? Westwood has so many homeless people. I mean, years ago they had that gimmick, Hands Across America, and everybody held hands at the same time. Well, why don't we do a ring around the UCLA campus? I know we'd have 1 ring of homeless people, okay, but how many rings would we really have once we actually?
Thank you, Mr. Greenspan. You got almost 2 minutes. You got almost 2 minutes there, but thank you.
I know. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Audrey, followed by Joe Jimenez. Ms. Audrey M., followed by Joe Jimenez, who you're not responding, so perhaps Mello Desiree. Doctor, please come forward, followed by Armando Herman.
And just for the record, Chair, there is quorum now.
There is quorum. Thank you. We are joined by Monica Rodriguez, and we have quorum. Dr. Mello, followed by Armando Herman.
Greetings. So my issue is with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, the real-time live shelter bed tracking system. There are some series of internal issues that's happening with LASA. As I mentioned before, the outreach and engagement is pretty bad. So as far as data is concerned, there's a lot of data that they did not submit to the Housing and Urban Development. And this is why you have the homeless crisis the way it is now. If you're spending $117 million, or if the county is giving them $44 million, or if HUD is giving them $3.5 billion, whatever the case is, they have to do right by solving the problem first before they hire new staff. Now, on Friday, September 27th, they hired 11 new staff members. Now, these are not regular people. There are policy, there are directors, there are supervisors, so they're making close to 6 figures off the bat. With that being said, you have people like Peter Lynn that does not reply to repeat grievances that a lot of these LASA-funded organizations are getting, such as HOPICS. So we ask that there has to be a better oversight committee. The commission meeting concerning LASA, these are, like I said, unpaid people who don't really care to fix anything. So therefore, any issues that LASA has that they are supposed to fix, because they're not getting paid, they don't put it on the ballot. We're getting tired of homeless outreach people coming from the valley, no lived experience, have no clue of how to help people, and yet they are making money to take care of their family while people are out there starving to death. They don't want to be talked down to. They definitely don't want to be ignored. So when you have repeat offenders like LASA that are required to give certain datas at the end of the year and they don't, they have to be held accountable.
Thank you. And 1 minute for General.
I applied for a LASA contract in August for the RFSQ process, and I myself was a woman that was abused by the people concerned. And so instead of continuing to get abused, I wrote a plan to help homeless individuals. And instead, LASA decides to send me a cease and desist stating that I claim to be a LASA employee. How arrogant, how defamable. I'm out there trying with no funding to help house people so families don't stay in the street, and instead of LASA funding the projects that we submitted, they send me a cease and desist letter. A black girl born and raised in South LA with no money. LASA feels threatened enough to send me a cease and desist letter, and Peter Lynn still has not answered to that, so that's going to cost $22 million. I'm saying that in advance because it's going to be filed this week. We're tired of the bullshit. Thank you.
Okay, we have Armando Herman, who has not responded yet. I've called him out 4 or 5 times. Joe Jimenez. Joe Jimenez, maybe not here now. And Dan will be, Dan will be after Armando Herman.
Never in the history have we allowed real-time bed shelter. We've done nothing right. Nothing ever gets done right. Shoot the monkey for the bridge home when law punishes words. Item 3, cash assistance, rent, such an underscore. Case number 19STRO06853. Hugo Stephen Rossiter, I need money. You filed, however, my complaint made about alleged misconduct of Los Angeles for housing is retaliation. Mommy Monica knows. Speaking out, pussy, unconstitutional. Fucking is treason. Countrymen, hear me now. Out. Bridges and homes don't connect people. LASA doesn't connect me with rent, doesn't connect me with cash assistance or the feasibility. That's why it's retaliation. You still can't do anything right. You fucking chongos don't do anything right. For that reason, I'm still here complaining about the history of shelter, bed, and tracking systems. So when you find the money on item 3, give me that cash assistance. When you find me essential rent, give me that fucking rent. So, page 9812, United States Bagdasarian 0950529. The Second Appellate Court's default September 13, ELWOOD LUI, the Administrative Presiding Justice, who will hear my words when our law punishes
I
words.
have 1 minute for general public comment.
Right. Regarding the North Tower off of the second floor off of 3rd and Spring Street, when I will fight back for every inch of housing, when I will fight back for every right of constitutional free speech, my free speech is being hindered by the city of Los Angeles due to the restraining orders on item 19STRO06853. 3 fucking TROs in less than a year is retaliatory. 3 fucking TROs because I'm homeless. 3 TROs because I suffer from an invisible disability, and for that fucking reason, I'm still here in council chambers. When the fuck do you plan to help a homeless man? When the fuck do you plan to help anyone who sits on a sidewalk in streets begging for your help? Ben Carson, fuck Eric Garcetti.
Dan, you're next, followed by Joe Jimenez. If you're here, Joe, and if not, then Tina Bear C. Tina Bear C. will be after Dan.
Thank you. Well, council members, Daniel Gus, believe it or not, some positive feedback for you. I recently saw a video of Mayor Garcetti making a bed in, I think it's a Bridge Home trailer. Just first and foremost, please stop making silly videos because it had a Keystone Cops-like flavor to it, and I just thought it was really in bad taste.
Speaking to the items,
I am. I'm talking about a Bridge Home.
1, 2, or 3. Okay.
Yeah, and so I think that video really demeans what that tent is intended to do. That said, I love the look of the tent. I love the look of that cubby that where the bed was that Mayor Garcetti was making. I think that there's something there that you needed to emphasize. In the cubby, there's the bed, there are a few cabinets. It looked clean, well lit, safe, air conditioned. And there I saw what looked like a crate for perhaps a homeless person's dog or cat or what have you. And I think that's something that you folks should be emphasizing, that these Bridge Home places can accommodate animals, and I bet you will have a lot of people lined up for them if you emphasize that. And by the way, I think the permanent supportive housing is a waste of billions of dollars. I think that that these bridge housing tents should be used for long term, and I think it should end there. You'll get much more value for the buck. You'll get people off the street sooner, I think. But I thought that I think that that tent where Mayor Garcetti was making the bed looked fantastic and sustainable over the long term. But again, the overarching issue is that we should not have the mayor making what appears to be silly videos that seem to demean and diminish what you're trying to accomplish. But generally good on that trailer thing. Okay, I'll go off to my 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Council members, I'm holding in my hands one of many PRAs that the city is not weeks or months behind. This is a PRA that's 5.5 years behind. It would have taken the city all of 30 seconds to fill this one, and I don't need to get into the details. But recently I hired an attorney who's suing Mayor Garcetti over records, public records that they're not coughing up. And I can tell you that there are records that I'm trying to get in relation to homelessness and poverty for my column in City Watch. And if the agencies who are involved with homelessness and poverty don't kick up the records, there may be a lawsuit filed against those agencies. So if you see, go online, look up Daniel Gus versus City of Los Angeles, not the small claim suit that I just won, but the one that I recently filed regarding Mayor Garcetti's personal use of a private email account for public business. Your agencies are going to get sued next. I don't want to do it. Thank you.
All right. Tina Bear, followed by Red Chief, followed by Philip Hugo. Any of those that I called here? It looks like perhaps not. Alana Riemerman and Armando Abramian. All right, so no Tina Bear, no Red Chief, and no Philip Hugo. All right, last call. And your name? Okay, I'll tell you what, Alana, if you wouldn't mind holding, I kind of jumped the gun because you're just one item. So I'm going to do a little bit of business and then I'll call you right up. What I'd like to do then is have Ms. Amatya read items 4 and 5, please, into the record. We'll do that.
Item number 4, City Administrative Officer and Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department reports relative to the disposition of the city-owned property located at 283 West Imperial Highway. Item number 5, CAO and 8SID LA reports and resolution relative to the tax-exempt multifamily conduit revenue bonds or notes for the Summit View Apartments located at 11681 Foothill Boulevard in Council District 7.
Thanks, Ms. Amatya. All right, colleagues, what I'd like to do is take items 4 and 5 on consent if there are no objections. So that's what we'll do, which brings me to item 3, and we do have some speakers for item 3, starting with Alana Reimerman.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Alana Reimerman. I'm a project manager at Shelter Partnership, a homelessness and housing policy organization. But I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Los Angeles Aging Advocacy Coalition. We're a coalition of service providers, housing developers, healthcare agencies, and other stakeholders that are advocating for policies that benefit literally and at-risk homeless older adults. So we all know that there's a growing epidemic of older adult homelessness. In LA County, 62 and older adults increased by 31% between 2017 and 2019, and it's expected that the 65 and older homeless older adult population will triple by 2030. So we really commend what you're doing here to develop a pilot to help stem older adults from falling into homelessness. And just a couple recommendations as you're developing this program. One, scale up existing programs, so including the shallow subsidy that LASA has developed, the Santa Monica,
Just
only 1 minute.
wrap up.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But our coalition would like to lend expertise in the development of the program if we can. So again, the Los Angeles Aging Advocacy Coalition policy.
Thank you so much. All right, let it be known that the entire time that Alana Reimerman was speaking, giving public testimony, that Wayne Spindler was disrupting the meeting for the entire minute that she was speaking. That is your last warning before you'll be asked to leave this hearing. I'm gonna... Okay, Wayne, you have filled out multiple items, and so has Corey Schmidt. So step forward. If you can make it to the microphone without disrupting the meeting, that'll be great. Okay, so you get 2 minutes for all of your items, and then 1 minute for general.
Now, you see, you've been doing something today. It's called escalating things to a new level. So now, as you see what's going to happen next, I got an interesting phone call last night, about 9 o'clock. And it was about you. I wonder what...
The items.
Yeah, I wonder why. Why they would want to know about you. Who wants to know about you? I can't imagine. So, you know, you're doing a fucking bad fucking job stealing $1.2 billion fucking dollars of taxpayer money, man. You're not covering up your fucking theft too well. And you see, part of the discussion was this, my little former tap dancer, former Jamba Juice server and vendor, okay? You got $1.2 billion. That's $1,200 million. and you haven't been using it for what it was supposed to be used for. And what you're doing is you're routing the money to stupid fucking shit that doesn't apply. The bond was not voted on for what you're using it for. Now, the last motherfucker that did this was the LAUSD when they bought iPads with bond money. And you doing this shit again. You're doing it again. And then I'm going to get to my general with a big, fat fucking surprise and a big, fat legal cock. So here it is. You got punked. I had 3 meetings in a row, and you've been erasing my cards off of your kiosk system, or you're not calling them. And why are you doing it? Because you're attempting to subvert and cover up what I'm about to say. That's why. Because you know full well who called me last night. Oh, you know who fucking called me last night. You know what it's about. So, you know what? I would do this if I were you. I would look into moving to France. They have a non-extradition treaty with the United States, because I'm sure you've been on a cruise ship before. I'm sure you can book passage on one of those tap dancing routines. You fucking little fake Indian fucking little faggot, you. So you're going to join your friends in a big party, all right? So you just try to throw me out, faggot. We'll see
All right,
you
we
on
have Corey
Friday.
Schmidt. Corey Schmidt filled out items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but we've already heard items 4 and 5, so 2 minutes for items 1, 2, and 3, and then 1 minute for general public comment.
Corey Schmidt for the record, and also for the record, I signed up for all items prior to anything being heard.
2 minutes then for all of them.
So, I'll get to that in a second. So, I'm curious to hear what the bridge home strategy is. Number 2, the shelter bed tracking for the homeless shelters. I think that's a good idea. I like the automated system for finding out if there's a place available, where it is, where I can find it. You know, I think that making it digital is a good idea. Cash assistance for seniors, for rent, food, and necessities, I also think that's a good idea. But maybe more than just seniors, maybe, you know, more than just one group of people. And then number 4, disposing of 283 Imperial Highway. I agree. I heard that they don't like free speech over there, and I see that some of you over here might not either. So it's kind of concerning to me. But yeah, I agree with that. Number 5, not really my area, so let's see. I was going to give you guys some praise, because I like you guys, especially this council. You guys usually do a pretty good job, but I don't know what's going on today. Both just now and upstairs, they're erasing our cards, so I don't know what that's all about. But let's go to my general public comment. What I was going to say was that you guys take a lot of shit from the public, and I think, you know, I was going to praise you for taking so much shit and just kind of looking the other way and just going on with business as you should. But I just, the public comment thing with the speaker cards today is kind of pissing me off, so I don't know what that's about. I think you should knock it off. And then what I was going to bring up was Bonin. We have a proposal from our neighborhood council, and I'm speaking on my behalf, not as the council. But there's a proposal that's been sitting there in regards to outreach vehicle and a team, like a 2-person team for some sort of outreach for homeless. And haven't heard anything from you, so I just thought I'd bring it up. Be cool to hear back from you on that. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 3, but I'm waiting to see if we have any other speakers specific to item 3.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to confirm, for item 4, the committee is approving the CAO report, and for item 5, it's the CAO report and resolution. That's me.
Yes, and we already approved that, yes, on consent. Which brings us to item 3, and we did hear from one speaker, and I'm looking to see if there are other cards specific to item 3, and there are not. So let's hear the item, please.
Item number 3, motion of Farrell, Rue, Wesson, Krokorian, relative to the feasibility of creating a pilot program that provides cash assistance to seniors for basic essentials like rent, food, and medical needs.
Thank you, and I understand are we going to have a verbal report on this? No, we're not. All right. Let me just give you the origin of this. We know that based on the most recent point-in-time homeless count back in January, that seniors make up nearly 10%, and this is people age 62 and over, nearly 10% of the numbers in the latest homelessness count, and the numbers are growing. Seniors are finding it increasingly difficult because of skyrocketing rents and just the price of, the cost of living in Los Angeles and limited incomes, oftentimes just Social Security. The increase in homelessness among seniors was 5% year over year, just this year alone. We know that we need to do more, and we know that whenever we can keep people from falling into homelessness who are extremely rent burdened, then that's the other half of the equation of actually building adequate permanent supportive housing for people who have already been experiencing homelessness. In other words, it's much better and less traumatic for individuals to make sure that they don't end up homeless in the first place. And this council is working on a variety of fronts to focus on that very issue. We know that the city of Santa Monica recently voted to expand a pilot program that they began a couple of years ago to offer rental subsidies to help keep seniors housed. And of course that leaves some money for the expenses of medical care and food and some basic necessities, which is why I have been asking Housing Community Investment Department, the Department of Aging, to report back on programs by the county and LAHSA that can provide some form of assistance, a subsidy, to help in paying for the essential of just rent for seniors. So they then can have additional funds for the basic necessities. So that is really where we're coming from. This is one aspect of the rent-burdened community and the growing homelessness that we are focusing on now. So I look forward to hearing those reports back. And colleagues, what I'd like to do is just approve this motion so we can get on with it, move forward, get those reports generated. And I think that sounds agreeable, so that'll be the order. Thank you so much. And then that brings us to item 1. Okay. Did you hear? Are you here to speak on item 1? At the end. We'll do general public comment at the end. Yeah, we're not done with that yet. So we'll hear item 1 now, please.
Item number 1, continued from September 18, 2019, Homeless Strategy Committee transmittal relative to the Bridge Home Program status and funding recommendations.
All right. And no comments. So if the CEO could step forward. Ms. Barkley. Welcome.
Thank you. Meg Barkley, City Homeless Coordinator in the Office of the City Administrative Officer. The report before you today was heard by the Homeless Strategy Committee on...
And Meg, just a little closer with the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, is that better? That's better.
Yeah.
The report before you today was heard by the Homeless Strategy Committee on August 29th, 2019. It describes the status of the Bridge Home Program and sites that we're aware of at this time, as well as the funding that has been approved to date for the program, the funds remaining from the overall amount of funding that's been allocated for the program to date, a discussion of the amount of capital that would be needed for, again, the sites that we're aware of that don't have committed capital funding, and the operational gap as well, and the funds that would be needed to operate these sites. To date, $96 million has been approved for 1,450 beds for construction and operating, and also for pre-development and maintenance costs. As it relates to operating, the County of Los Angeles is supporting 600 beds with Measure H funding for 3 years at a bed rate of $50 per bed per night for programs that are serving individuals, and $60 per bed per night for trauma-informed programs for women. And the city is supplementing Measure H funding for the individual beds to make sure that we have $60 per bed per night to operate the sites at a higher service, lower barrier program model that we believe is needed for the Bridge Home program. There's an additional, at the time of this report, there are additional 8 sites that are being reviewed for feasibility. 7 of them have had motions at the time, and there's an additional site that has a motion that's pending. Those sites have 610 beds between them, and since the report was since this report went to Homeless Strategy Committee, one of the sites, the site on Raymer in Council District 2, actually the funding for construction has been approved for that site. So it's sort of moved from Attachment B to Attachment A. In order to move forward with those sites, we estimate $34.4 million. At this time, the estimate is $34.4 million for those sites between whether they're construction or leasing of private facility or private buildings. And there are a couple, the report describes a couple of sites with operating needs or funding in, a couple of sites in Council District 15 that funding was approved from the general fund with the anticipation that it would be replaced with funding from the HAP program, the State Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, or HAP, once we had that grant. So at this time, the CAO recommended to support the implementation of those 8, but now 7 sites from Attachment B, and also that we be instructed to work with the County of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, and the State of California to identify operating funding for those sites. The HSC did not make a recommendation on the CAO recommendation number 2 regarding reserving funding in the amount of $37.4 million for the sites that are being considered for being reviewed for feasibility at this time. Given where we are in the process for the homeless housing and prevention program, or housing assistance and prevention program, and I'm sorry I wasn't clear, that's where we're recommending the reservation from. We would actually, I think, we would like to, since we'll be coming back to the Homeless Strategy Committee with recommendations for the HAP grant in November, pursuant to prior instruction from this committee. And so I think at that time we'll have a better sense by then of how much these sites are going to need, because the estimates are estimates at this point. Feasibility is still ongoing, and we would like to have a better sense of the final cost of construction for those sites. And so we can come back in November with a recommendation related to that reservation. And we can, in the meantime, if there are projects that need to have a funding recommendation to move forward, we could continue the process of doing those projects by motion, as was done with Raymer, with the recommendation to have either reserve the HAP funding or some other mechanism for giving them the funding now and repaying it when the HAP grant is received. That will give us a better accurate picture of the cost of these sites and hopefully avoid amendments to this amount as we move forward.
So once the estimates for the cost of these sites come in, what do you see as the obstacles, or if any, for getting that funding approved?
I think that as long as it would be, the only thing I would see as obstacles would be any other competing priorities for this funding, which is something that we'll be working out and making recommendations regarding the HAP grant as a whole, which is another reason to allow us to sort of consider and have a better idea of what the costs of those sites are as we are preparing the recommendations you've requested regarding the HAP grant.
So there's lots of these bridge housing sites that have moved forward.
Yes.
Do you anticipate structural funding shortfalls for any of those that we've moved forward so far? Do you see any red flags?
Well, we have sufficient funding for. There are some issues, and thank you for asking me that. The supplemental funding and the city funding that's been approved for operating, the supplemental funding for the Measure H and for the sites that we've fully funded, the city has fully funded the operations costs. We've used the HEAP grant, which expires June 30th, 2021. And so that we would run into, even though these sites are anticipated to be open for 3 years, there is going to be a need to fund the difference between June 30th, 2021 and the year 3 end date.
For all sites?
For all of the sites, yes. So even for the sites where we have supplemental, the $10 per bed per night, that doesn't go past June 30, 2021. And in all cases, the 3-year end date is past June 30, 2021. So we do have a structural gap in making sure that we can complete the operating for all of the sites, whether they're subsidized by Measure H or not. And then also, as we note in the report, there's 610 additional beds that could come online and be approved with construction funding that would require 100%, $60 per bed per night from somewhere. Our hope is that the county or the state or LASA with their HAP grant may step up on some of those, but we haven't begun those conversations yet.
So Meg, since we know that Measure H provides 10 years of funding for services, does anything lead you to believe that after June 30th of 2021 that there will be a reluctance to fund these operations? Does anything give you a concern about that?
Well, I think as you heard when we had the meeting on homelessness in City Council, the director of the County Homeless Initiative was reluctant to agree to fund any additional beds beyond the 600. Our hope is that we have, I think there was, we're all very pleasantly and in some ways terrifyingly surprised by the success of the Bridge Home program. I think it's exceeded everybody's expectations, and that's a good thing. And so our hope is that would be, when we have real sites with real motions now as opposed to a sort of hypothetical description of a program, which is where we were when that commitment happened. So that's why we are planning to go back with a really good description of these are real sites, these are real motions, council members are standing behind these sites, and this is how much money we have to and have already committed. This is how much is needed to meet that challenge. So I think we're hopeful that also we'll have good partners in the county for looking to the state for an ongoing source of funding for homeless services. One-time funding makes it very obviously the needs of persons experiencing homelessness in the city of Los Angeles are not time limited, and we expect that systems that we put in place to address people's needs as they become homeless and make homeless any instance of homeless shorter and have a more reliable system for addressing people's needs, that is going to be an ongoing need. If we can't, there's a lot of infrastructure that will need to be maintained in order to make sure that we can make people's experience of homelessness as brief as possible. And that's not even beyond the 10 years of Measure H, that we're going to need ongoing assistance. And the hope is that also demonstrating that the city has stepped up and put a lot of effort and a lot of our own money and property and monetary and political capital into establishing all of these sites, and hoping that the county or the state, actually in this case the state, could meet us halfway there. So I think we have a very good case to make. It's just a matter of getting started, making it, and seeing where we land.
And hoping that, philosophically, Los Angeles has probably done more in terms of the whole bridge housing program, and we've really leaned in and hit the gas, and we're moving full steam ahead. And we may end up with more sites than we can actually fund, which would be a lovely problem to have, but because we're really going for it. Arguably, that's more than other municipalities are doing in the county.
I'm not aware of any other city for sure in the county. I think Pomona is built their own one shelter.
So they'll tap into
But I'm
H
not aware of
funds.
any other municipality in the country that's doing what we're doing, like a bridge home at the scale that we're doing it.
Right. So in the spirit of partnership and collaboration with the county, the whole unprecedented partnership between the City of LA and the County of LA, we want to keep that going, of course.
Yes.
We want to keep encouraging it. But we could also make the case that one of the main reasons H was approved in the first place is because the voters of Los Angeles City overwhelmingly put it over the top, right? So that's another, I don't think we have to prove anything to our county friends, and I'm sure
Expectations are
it's
high.
probably just a smart position not to overcommit, a year and a half in advance, 2 years in advance, but certainly as we keep making the case, there's going to be a little seed of uncertainty for all of us since we're getting all of these off the ground and securing that long-term funding.
Yes.
Then there's the whole piece of looking at HAPP for the next fiscal year from the state and really getting a significant, if not an outright match for what we're doing in the city of Los Angeles and that approach as well.
Exactly.
One more question is the guidelines for the HAP funds. Did you say just then when they'll be released, or do you have that timeline in place?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The guidelines
Yes.
for the
Yes.
HAP funds.
So the state expects to release the HAP guidelines publicly, I believe, this week or next week. And they also will be releasing the application map like they did last year so we'll know exactly what's expected in an application by the end of the month as well. At which point, the question then is when they'll open the application. We don't expect that they will not open the application until after HUD certifies all of the 2019 count results. And so I don't expect that to happen before November of this year. I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. If it happens before then, we'll all be very surprised. And so the application, I don't expect that to open before December. And so our hope is to come back with a report to this committee. We'll go to the Homeless Strategy Committee first in November, and then to this committee in December, so that we could have authority to apply by the time that the application opens. And they have confirmed that they will do the same, be along the same process as they were last year, where we will apply. They will not wait until all the applications are in. They will review applications as they arrive, notify of award, and make the awards on a case-by-case, on a rolling basis as applications are made. So we're hopeful that we would have the funding in hand very soon after we apply. I think last year it was within a month of our application we had the check for our HEAP award. So our hope would be that would be the situation again, and I have every indication from the homeless, I'm going to get this wrong, the Homeless Financing Council at the state. There's another C in there, I just can't remember what it is, that will be, I have every indication from them that will be the case this time as well.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions? No, we're good. Well, thank you. Thanks, Meg, for all your work, you and your team. Really, really great stuff for staying on top of everything. So I have a recommendation. Approve the HSC recommendations 1 and 2 and have the following instruction. The City Administrative Officer and Chief Legislative Analyst should consider allocating $37,359,000 for a bridge home program when preparing recommendations pursuant to motion O'Farrell, Krikorian, Wesson, Blumenfield, Council File 19-0914, regarding the allocation of the city's grant under the State of California Homeless Housing Assistance and Planning Program, HAP. Without objections, that'll be the instruction. And so it is. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item 2.
Item number 2, continued from September 18, 2019, Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority report relative to the real-time live shelter bed tracking system, along with an assessment of other ways technology can be used to enhance efficiency and transparency in the homeless system.
Thank you. And we have officials from Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority at the table joining us. Welcome, gentlemen, and please begin.
I'm Nathaniel Vergao, the Director of Access and Engagement for LASA.
Jeff Proctor, Acting Associate Director of Performance Management.
And Andrew Hill, Interim Housing Coordinator for LASA as well. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to this particular resource that LASA has taken upon itself to develop. The bed availability tool has been something that uses the information of shelters that we fund in conjunction with Google Maps, in essence, to be able to display on the resource where those locations are, and then based off of data in our homeless management information system, an approximation of how many beds are available. In testing this resource, what we have seen is there's a true benefit to, if we're looking to enhance the overall system, that a reliance on outreach would be of greatest benefit. The idea being every person experiencing homelessness, in order to access shelter, would be best served by being assessed, appropriately directed and supported towards the most appropriate resources. As we've looked at the resources within the bed availability tool, it has been an effort to coordinate with those providers as well as the larger community what are the best means of access, and collecting the points of access for those locations has made it easier for outreach and other homeless service providers to coordinate between one place to another. The benefit being outreach is best situated to make those connections.
So I'm here today to talk to you about our experience of using the app in the outreach context. So actually, let me back up. I shouldn't call it an app. It's not actually an application. It's a web-based platform, so it's not an app that you would download from the Apple Store or anything like that. Currently, our outreach teams do have access to this information, and we've been using it for, was it 3 months now? Yes. Approximately 90 days now. And it's actually been a tremendous benefit to us. We used to, whenever we would encounter somebody who was interested in a shelter bed, at that point, call every shelter that we knew of, trying to find an available bed. Now, grant you, this tool does not have every shelter in the county in it. We're only able to track availability in the shelters that we fund. And so, for example, the missions that are not contracted with LASA and do not provide their information to the HMIS system, we don't have access to their availability through this tool. We are working to figure out if there's a way to integrate that, but at this point we don't have, there's no leverage there, and so we don't necessarily have a mechanism for
Real quick, what would that universe be of the beds you don't have access to?
The total number, I don't have that off the top of my head.
In sort of percentages, what might it be?
Based on the housing inventory count that LASA released this last week, it's probably about 2/3 of the available or known shelter beds across the county would not be known to the bed app because they are held behind another provider or administrator or funder firewall, essentially. Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Health Services, they restrict access to their programs for people that they have predetermined to be eligible for that service. So there's some funding restrictions that would limit our ability to make available their resource. And then there are also those unfunded private institutions like the missions who have historically not interacted with LASA or other public funders.
So we have to break through that. I mean, that's like a non-negotiable. We have to obliterate that obstacle. And I'm not like suggesting you make a phone call and make that happen right now, but talk about obstacles to getting people under a roof. Man, that's 2/3 roughly. So I appreciate your honesty, but you need to advise us on how we can break through that as legislators, and we need to figure out together what role LASA can play in helping with that, because that's a real. I'm a bit stupefied right now.
Can I push back on the sort of foundation of that argument? That assumption is, I've been getting tagged, and Catherine Barger has been getting tagged on Facebook for a year from the Reverend Andy Bales, who is desperate for us to include his availability for people. He says he does not care how full they are. He will find a place, a bed for families with kids, no matter what. Now, I disagree with Andy on a lot of stuff. I agree with Andy on a lot of stuff. But there's one place that I know of that wants to be part of the system. And so I want to know then really what the barriers are. Because some of them clearly don't exist. And maybe they're more technical than they are sort of proprietary.
So if I may, currently in the testing and the development of this tool, we are using HMIS as our primary platform. And the missions do not enter data into the HMIS platform, so we don't have access to that through the HMIS system. We are exploring other mechanisms of getting additional information from other providers, such as the missions, but we're not there yet. So that is something that is in the plans for future.
Well, what about a world where there's a third party, off the top of my head, literally, where there's a third party that can collect all of that availability without violating any sort of rules or laws or what have you, so that there's a space where service providers can tap into that space and say, well, over here, Andy Bell's is offering this many beds, and over here, this is LASA's database, this is what they're showing. At least that would be something that we don't have now, that we could help place people more quickly. And it would need to be more than just LASA or some of the traditional service providers accessing. It could be an everyday resident on a street who sees someone who's homeless at the end of his or her street and says, hey, do you need some help? Because I might be able to help you get housed tonight. And that happens a lot with us individually and with some of our neighbors and people we've talked to. So we need to figure out a system wherein everyone can participate in helping people get shelter overnight, including other agencies. Like it or not, the police often interact with people who say, if you can find me a bed, I'll take one. Mm-hmm. So they would also need to have that access in some form. That's really what we need in terms of a database, one that will be able to have the complete interconnectedness that we absolutely have to have, and then one that would have access to people who need to, have someone in front of them who wants a bed for that night. That's what we need to get to, and we need to get to that fast. But you have more to report on, so we'll open it back up for questions. Please continue with what more you have.
Well, essentially, I was going to speak to what it has actually provided for our teams, which is has been a tremendous benefit in terms of having a starting place. This is not a bed reservation system, so when we access the information, it already may be stale, even if it was just updated 5 minutes prior, as there are referrals into these beds from a variety of different sources, but it has provided a strong platform for us to understand where to start looking for that information. Right now, the focus is strictly on the crisis beds, because those are the first line of beds. But as Andrew pointed out, our goal really in mapping out our system is to make sure that we're connecting people to all appropriate resources. So in addition to the bed availability tool, we also have within LASA and across the health agencies essentially an air traffic control system between our programs. So whenever our outreach teams come across an individual who might be appropriate for a different level of care, whether it's a DHS funded bed that would provide additional medical supports, or might be eligible for a Department of Mental Health funded bed, or may already be in the process of getting housed, so they're matched to a resource and might be eligible for a bridge bed. We're immediately able to reach out to those air traffic control folks to find out resources available outside of the crisis bed system. So we're using this application, this resource currently for those folks who have not been connected to the system, are not matched, and would not need that higher level of care. So it is for the crisis beds.
Let me ask you this, because you said it's web-based, but does LASA have recommendations for us on what kind of technology could accomplish what we're talking about here?
Immediately, I don't. I'm not a technical expert, so
because, I mean, this is the information age we're living in, and technological advances, this should not be a barrier. I mean, this barrier that exists should not be here, especially at this late date. So I think it would be wise to advise us, do some research on what kind of technologies are needed, even work with our own ITA department to come up with something that we could, I don't know, what, colleagues, what do you think?
Our ITA, but the mayor has a tech advisory council that's made up from representatives of Google and Snap and all those companies. There's got to be a way to get these companies to help us do this a lot quicker. I know they can. My guess is they're willing. I just think we need somebody to sort of be the matchmaker of the situation. I mean, I can go on to Open Table right now and find out which restaurants downtown have a seat tonight. I can go onto Google Maps and I can see where there's going to be a traffic jam on the way home. There's got to be a better way. So, I mean, some of the missions may not have the tech themselves to integrate with it, but I think we can go a lot bigger than what we're doing, and I bet we can get the tech community to help.
I bet we could too, and I bet the ones that don't have the tech would quickly develop it if we had some sort of master plan and something they could plug into, right? Ms. Rodriguez.
Well, I was very eager to hear your presentation today because I was under the impression before discovering that it was a web-based platform versus an app, because my understanding there are others outside that are interested in developing that app and are already in conversation in doing so. In fact, LAPD, I've had conversations with Peter Marks even on that issue. Yeah. So, there have been conversations. I just want to make sure, because there's nothing that kind of infuriates me more than hearing, whatever the barriers are. I understand with the VA and how they do their placements, given their population that they have to serve. But there really is no reason to be able to ascertain the availability of beds from the mission, for example, and whatever Andy has or whatever other availability we have, particularly when we talk about potentially the scale to which that might be available outside of what LASA funds. So there's no reason for us not to have this. I think it's one of the tools I know LAPD, when, if outreach workers are not going out at night, and LAPD is, and they might discover an individual that might be interested in going into a shelter, then I would like for them to be able to see that opportunity to connect them. I know there was a story in the San Fernando Valley with a mother who was living in a vehicle, was connected to services at North Valley Caring Services in my district. So we shouldn't have impediments like this. I think, there's too much technology that's readily available to support us in helping to meet these needs and actually get us connected to this information. And I'm happy to help facilitate this and get it accelerated.
Yeah, for your committee.
So if I may,
yes.
the reason I made the distinction about it not being an app is that from my understanding from conversations I did have with our IT department, having it as a web-based platform actually is more beneficial than having an app, because you don't have to worry about what device you're trying to access it from. It allows you to, whether it's an Apple or a Google phone or a Samsung, it doesn't matter. You can access it as long as you can get an internet connection. So it's not a question of what device. So there was a specific
No, that's fine. But the content that it's carrying is the bigger issue here. And again, whether it's housed, with cloud updates, and whether or not we can keep it current so that everybody helps feed into the same platform. I mean, there's a whole variety of ways you can kind of cut this up, right? The fact that it exists, I'm happy about. I think the fact that I don't know that it's widely utilized or by those outside of that kind of circle of service providers, I think, that are more widely kind of familiar with it. This is something that I know, just on a law enforcement conversation, has been engaged in as well.
In regards to the challenges around the data, what you can also find in terms of crisis housing being the lowest barrier of our interim housing programs, that in winter shelter. As with winter shelter is, it can say that a bed is available, but that doesn't account for those persons that are in line for intakes.
Sure.
So the challenge is with our providers and in the exploration of expanding to non-funded providers is figuring out how to standardize the data processes across our different systems and across our different program types. What we have worked on with our providers is looking towards a more standardized process just within our own funding and in sharing this information to outreach, building an understanding about what it means that a bed is available on the app. What it presently means is a bed service, which is our tracking method for occupancy on a given night, has not been given to the full capacity. So if there are 10 beds in their contract, if they haven't given out 10 services for that night, then it will still appear open, even though there may be persons waiting in line for those beds. That presents a challenge in just the accuracy and ability for general public to understand what that exactly means.
Isn't that an in-house issue, though? Like if I run a shelter, I'm going to know if my 10 contracted beds are called for because I've got a line of 20 people out the door. So I know those 10 beds are going to be taken. So I'm going to keep my bed availability off of the system.
So this is our first stab at this project. Mm-hmm. So as you've pointed out, there is not yet a perfect system. What you're pointing out are some of the challenges that we have, is to be able to pull data on a regular basis without necessarily relying on there being somebody at each of the programs who is pushing that button at designated times. We're trying to develop a system that is as automated as possible so that we're getting as much information without having to rely on that. The next stage will be working with those providers that are outside of our system that we won't be able to draw from in an automated fashion. So there are iterations to come. What we're trying to bring to you today is what we've developed thus far.
Appreciate that. So you'll report back on those two issues, the LASA sort of capabilities, and then the capabilities beyond LASA, in other words, the other 2/3, so to speak, simplistically. With great urgency, I hope. Ms. Rodriguez.
I just had one more question. So in terms of what we'll just say perceived obstacles or actual obstacles are in collecting some of the availability of beds that are outside of the funded LASA beds, aside from, let's say, the VA, what has been part of the hurdle in connecting that data or retrieving it?
The primary hurdle is that the application pulls its occupancy information out of HMIS. So it's those agencies or organizations that are not using HMIS as their data collection platform.
Right. So it's just that they maintain their numbers on a completely different type of program. Okay. All right.
What's the VA issue? I've heard it referenced a couple times.
The source of funding that they appoint.
The VA generally has very strict privacy walls.
Okay, but we're building bridge housing for them, and we're using Triple H funding to build PSH on their campus. So, I mean, we're funding shit, so they should be helping out.
I think it could be a conversation that we can have with them.
Let me know, because they're in my district and I deal with them a lot, and we're doing enough for them, given the absence of leadership from Washington and giving a shit about our vets, that we should be able to get some cooperation, I think.
If I can add just maybe a couple things. So we understand that there's concerns around access to all of the different system resources, and that be as transparent as possible. So in addition to the platform that we've described here, WASA is updating its Get Help page. The Get Help page is meant to be a variety of different resources where homeless persons themselves, providers, system partners, and the public community can go and quickly identify, different kinds of interventions for folks that need them. We have been expanding our access center and access points across the county, and also increasing our provision of prevention and diversion resources. So what we're attempting to do is to build out that information and make it more publicly available and known on that Get Help page, so that there are known, available public places for persons to go quickly and immediately to go and get connected to coordinated entry, and also for prevention conversations to happen as well. So that way we can try and see if there's other resources or interventions that we can provide that might be more appropriate than placing persons into shelter beds. One other thing that I might add is that, we've looked at some other continuums, what other continuums are doing, and their attempts at using technology to help provide access for persons experiencing homelessness. The city and county of San Francisco, they use their 311, like our 211 or 311, as the centralized point of access for emergency shelter for the city and county of San Francisco, as a way for anyone to call and make a reservation for a shelter bed. And like us, they have expanded their resources. They've invested greatly in expanding shelter navigation centers, things like that. And what we see is that there's thousands of people on a wait list on any given day who have called into that 311 for a shelter bed. And what we would anticipate is that, we can make our information as, as visible and transparent as possible, but there's still going to be a general access issue in terms of, what resources are available given the need, given the scope of the need for shelter on any given day.
All right. So we'll note in the file the report, but when you come back, because this is a regular sort of update from LASA, could you come back prepared to advise us on technology that we could possibly assist with or work together on, and then take a look at other cities who have a very well-established, comprehensive, coordinated shelter bed placement system? You mentioned San Francisco. It'd be wonderful to find out what some of the best practices in other cities that could be a model that we could look to as well, and consider that. I think that could be very helpful. Appreciate it. Anything else? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the items, but we do have general public comment, so we'll go to those. And we have Dr. Na. Yes, sir. 1 minute, doctor.
How much time do I have here?
1 minute.
Okay. I'm going to give you the revolutionary way how to outreach homeless.
Okay.
As a medical doctor, I lived 10 years of homeless to study about it. The simple way is my phone number, 213-365-2470. If a homeless calls in, we will answer homeless information. They want to chat with somebody. They want to find a mentor. I have all the answer. My website is howtoendhomeless.com. Having said that, the government and charity organization just do not know what the homeless means. Okay, look at my teeth. I live the real homeless life. What the homeless list means is under-education. They are not educated well enough, not well informed enough. Therefore, my phone number, unforgettable phone number, is
Thank you.
the best way outreach.
Thank you. And if you want to leave that with us, you certainly can, or you can give it to us separately if you want to take that with you. You certainly can. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. All right, Armin Abramian and then Amber. Good afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here representing SoCal Recycling. The reason I'm here is I've been in the recycling business for 20 years, had many recycling centers in and around Los Angeles. Cal Recycle has implemented a new pilot program to offer recycling kind of outside of the box, and we're currently partnering with Santa Monica, Culver City, and West Hollywood to kind of have a mobile recycling center moving throughout those cities. And throughout my professional career, we've always had recycling centers get closed down because inevitably we attract homeless people to the recycling center, and nobody wants recycling in their backyard. So we got the idea to offer homelessness services in conjunction with the recycling center. We've reached out to a few different city agencies. We've met with Homeless Healthcare LA, which intakes about 700 people a day at their refresh spot. So we want to take that and different outreach services on wheels. And I'm here to present that idea.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abramian. Have you met with our own sanitation?
I have
Bureau?
not met with sanitation. I've met with or spoken to a few people at the mayor's office. I've spoken a few times with Robert Park, emailed a few other homeless outreach, people that have not responded, to be quite honest with you.
Well,
and that's why I'm here.
leave some of your information, and we'll look into this. Appreciate it. Thank you. And then Amber. Is there an Amber here? No Amber. All right. I don't have any other comment cards on my screen. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending this hearing, and this meeting is adjourned.